We are back for yet another dialogue around healing and repair. So, in previous episodes, we've been talking about our upbringing and the various containers, familial containers, institutional, cultural, structural uh, uh, shapes that are things that have shaped us, right, within the context of this work. And so we've explored feelings of fragmentation, where those stories, those myths came from around our beingness and our identity, the ways we've held that, some of the psychic cost of that, of the fragmentation, how we came to become hyper independent. um, we talked about emotional suppression, how our achievement, our sense of self-worth was tied to performance, our achievement, what it's like to be Black women, creative, educated, loving Black women in systems that prioritize profit over our humanity, our human dignity, um, over our joy, the ways that we've colluded in that process unconsciously, and how we've been conditioned, quite frankly, conditioned to be strong and to be resilient without really holding space for all of our humanity and who we are. And so last session was our fun session because we got to start talking about healing and
Mhm.
repair. Like, so what, right? Like all of
Yeah.
those things happened to us, but they ultimately didn't destroy the truth of who we are.
Mhm.
And there were choices that we made and people that we met and opportunities that presented themselves to us to help us to begin to reclaim ourselves and refine ourselves. I believe that the universe is wise and loving and lavish and abundant. And that although part of what it means to be human is to have experienced what I call contrast learning, right?
Yeah.
These sort of moments of pain, of misalignment, of suffering, of fragmentation, that when we're in our right mind, when we align with who we really are, we start to reconnect and to really remember our wholeness and reclaim that powerfully. So we promised last episode that we would come back to talk about, we were talking about like the individual things, like what was happening inside of us, what were the unique choices that we made, the people we met along the way, these sort of more intimate interpersonal relationships that helped us to shift. And we promised that we would come back and talk about networks and groups and institutions um, that have been a part of the healing as well. And so that's the focus today.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, as you have thought about groups, group context, relational repair, um, the communities where that have helped you to heal, that have helped you to feel a sense of belonging, that have helped you feel love, and or institutions.
Mhm.
Where give do you have some examples of those groups or those systems of the or those institutions that have really supported you?
Yeah, group dynamics was actually one of my favorite psychology classes. I love thinking about how we can work together. Like, you're an individual, but then collectively we still need to work towards something. So that's always been fascinating to me to think about that. Um, when I think about community, I think about right after I graduated from my master's program, I wasn't able to find work. So I was unemployed for about
Mm,
2 years. So that's when I kind of discovered entrepreneurship. I leaned into my writing and my blog and just overall hustling, babysitting, doing all type of stuff.
mhm.
And I sent out an email one day to just about every young person I knew in my community and was just like, hey, this is what's going on in the world. If you want to chat, if you're worried about jobs, or if you just want to hang and eat good food, like come over to my house. And it was like a bunch of us. We have like a back room in my house, and we'd always gather there. And over time, it became like a core like six of us, yeah, six, seven of us, that would like meet regularly. So we met once a month. And then I think one time someone was like, what should we call ourselves? And I forget how it came up, but we were like Haven. And someone was like Safe Haven. And we just like been calling ourselves Safe Haven. And so we would meet in the beginning. It was more like I would have like a topic that I would discuss, like present, and then we would like discuss. But over time, it was just a place to like have community. Definitely like as people were like moving through their career, they're like, hey guys, I'm doing a fundraiser, please share, or can someone go like this post on LinkedIn for me, can someone, you know, read through things. And this became a place where we would just hang out. And one of my friends, Dean, who always was like encouraging of me like forming the group, we would always joke because when we sit in the room, we'd be like, I wonder what we're going to be talking about next year. Because every year we would just be dreaming like, oh, I just want to like have a job. I want to be in a place where I feel like comfortable. And we would always just be dreaming, oh, I want my business, I want a book, like all these different dreams. And they started to come true. So every year we're always like, I wonder what we're going to be talking about next summer. And it's just like a place where I just like, it's a mix of my siblings and my friends and their siblings. So it was two multiple families like basically like blended together, just meeting together. And I think it just served as a place for me to like gain leadership skills, learn, not even this wasn't on purpose, but I think by forming the group and talking with all these people. And yeah, just I remember like one time I was like, oh, there were people who weren't there. And I was like, why aren't these people coming? And then Dean was like, you need to stop worrying about the people who aren't here. Let's worry about the people who are here. And that always stuck with me whenever I do community things, even work. It's like, how can I, even in my work today, how can I help the people who are committed and engaged right here? And that's how I've always thought about community. Even when I was in my PhD program, I spoke about how I had my challenges through just going through the program and my mental health. And afterwards, I thought to myself, like, okay, I'm not happy here, but when was a moment I felt happy and how can I replicate that in this environment? And what came to mind was like safe haven. Like I
Interesting.
had a group of people. So then I just put out another email to my people in the PhD programs and master's program over at school and was just like, hey, come over to my house. I'll have food, bring crafts, anything you want to work on. And there were some people who came to actually work on projects, art projects or whatever. And there were other people who literally just came to eat and hang out. But
Yeah.
it became a regular thing where like once a month we would meet at my house. And then eventually we started to rotate to other people's. And it just became a place where like I think all of us needed that break, like during, you know, master's PhD program where we knew once a month for like several hours, we're just gonna have music playing in the background, we're gonna have good food, and we're just gonna like craft. And so that's always
Mm.
been something for me with in-person communities and then digital as well. I
Wait,
love being
wait,
like
wait,
in
wait.
that.
So, that's
Mhm.
a lot because let me just
Yeah.
unpack this a little bit. No, because there's just like a lot of rich nuggets there. All right.
Mhm.
So y'all ultimately ended up calling yourself Safe Haven, but you didn't come to. There was no perfection in the beginning. It wasn't. It really emerged to sound like from a need
Mhm.
to relate and to connect and have a space where you could just be, share
Mhm.
what you were feeling, be with other people who were also having that experience. And you also mentioned like there was a piece where it felt like more formal, like a presentation, but that quickly collapsed
Yeah.
into how about we just relate to one another as humans? And so it became food and laughter and joy. And you
Mhm.
mentioned the word dreaming a lot. It became a space for dreaming.
Mhm.
Everybody started to feel safe enough to share dreams. And
Yeah.
that ultimately in time you supported each other on those dreams. You asked for support from that
Mhm.
community. There was something that became very organic about it
Mhm.
and very natural, and that those dreams really started to come true.
Mhm.
And the other thing that's striking me about what you're saying, it was like it was just in your house, it was people contributed whatever they contributed in terms of like food and the gathering, but that people also just started to look for it and that it went look forward to it. And it
Mhm.
went on for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Um, and that I also heard that when you got sort of, you were feeling down again and alone in a different community,
Mhm.
you thought, well, when was the last time I felt good, that I felt supported, that I felt love, that I felt joy? and safe haven came up again. And so then you created that. So I'm hearing also this idea of, even in your PhD program, that you weren't really, there was no ready-made community already out there necessarily. You created the thing you wanted to experience,
Yeah.
and you invited other people consciously to it without a bunch of perfection or overperforming or trying to
Mm.
overly structure it. And that people came and
Yeah.
ultimately started to really stand in that. And then it sounds like in your PhD program, you all even started to move around places and spaces that no matter what was going down, you knew that once a month there would be joy, there would be music, there would be food, there would be support.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. I think yeah, I think it's important. I've always been open to just if I don't see something I need, I'm just gonna make it myself. So
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm,
I've done that even um in leadership positions, gathered like a few other Spelman sisters who were also entering leadership for the first time. And it didn't last long, but we like in the beginning would like meet and talk about some of the challenges we were having, support each other every now and then. If it's like, oh, hey, this like colleague said this, how would you guys respond? How do I do? And we just like would have a space to chat. So I think that's something that I've always enjoyed.
mm-hmm. What do you think it's in a way of that spontaneity that you talk about for people that, because a lot of people feel the need, they feel the gap, they feel the aloneness, the fragmentation, the separation, like, wow, I'm striving, I'm working hard, I'm doing all these things alone, but it doesn't necessarily prompt them to think, oh, create an organic community or to be spontaneous. What are some of the things that you think get in the way of that?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Maybe they don't know where to start or who to ask, where to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm gonna have to sit with that because I don't know. I don't know why like some do and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it really is just not knowing where to start. I do think if you're probably feeling some kind of way, there's probably someone else feeling that kind of way. And so
Mm-hmm.
you just need to find them. So whether that's I'm queen of email blasts, so I'm just gonna put out an email and just see who responds back,
Yeah.
and from there I just go. And if it's just 3 people, 4 people, that's fine too, as long as you have even one other person.
Yeah.
That's a community.
Mm. You know what I'm also struck by too, as you were saying that, you might have mentioned it in a previous episode, but you certainly mentioned to me outside of this space around how you grew up, how involved your father was in political organizing,
Mm,
and using your home as a space for community and political organizing, and that you developed a lot of skills there. Tell me about that, because I remember you mentioning it in passing, but I have a hunch that it has something to do that with you, just this being a part of who you are and how you lead.
yeah, maybe because I witnessed that myself in the
Mm-hmm.
house whenever there was some kind of political related thing, even from like organizing around someone running for office, or there's some kind of like Abner Louima. He was a Haitian who was brutalized by the police here in New York. And
Mm-hmm.
my family, like immediately, like we had people at the house and gathered and thought about how to make change, and had some activism going there. So is this something that I've always even seen, like my dad when he would be studying for the boards, his friends would come over and they would study together. So maybe subconsciously or by witnessing or seeing that at the home, I just saw like, oh, when you need to do something, just tell people to come over and work on it,
Yeah, yeah, because I'm thinking about that, right? Your formation, that's a part of your formation. Like,
Yeah.
you not only witnessed and observed your parents and other adults just doing that, right? Like,
Hmm.
not really lapsing into the isolation in the
Yeah.
community, or mobilizing themselves or inviting other people to mobilize
Mhm.
around a community cause. But a lot of people don't grow up with that, right?
Mm.
So leadership skills, right? Your father telling you like, hey, get the food together for people coming over, or organize these people, or raise money for that. Like, you just
Hmm.
did it because that was a part of your upbringing, but
Yeah.
that may not necessarily be the context that a lot of other people
Hmm.
are in. And I know, for example, you spend a lot of time online as well, right? In digital community. And it's funny because there's a lot of tension there, right? Like people are
Yeah.
like, IRL or in real life versus digital. And they often pit them against each other as this sort of dichotomy, which is like a
Mm.
false dichotomy. But I know that that's also been a very rich part of your life. So tell me a little bit about your online communities and like how
Mm.
your upbringing around community in real life, in-person gatherings has somehow now stretched beyond into these digital ecosystems.
Yeah, I've always as soon as I could get on the internet, I was in forums. Probably I shouldn't have been on them, but I was in the forum
Yeah.
chatting. Who knows who else chatted with? But used to always be online. Have always loved being on the internet, and forums were always just like a place I love just reading what people are writing and
Mhm.
commenting and all
Mhm.
of that. And I think yeah, being in online communities, I've been doing that for a while. Like some of them, they're on specific topics. Some I
Mhm.
join with friends. Like I remember in college, my friend was like, "Oh, there's this forum called D-Herbs. Like you need to get on it." And it was about like it was all these like Black people, not more people of color, talking about like shea butter and like herbs and all that natural stuff. And we were like early, like not putting perm in her hair and doing all
Mhm.
this stuff. So we were in these forums, like talking about like fasting and juicing and started to like
So
meet
all like
people.
natural approaches to well-being,
Yeah,
right?
like
In
more
terms
like a
of
wellness
food. Yeah.
forum.
Okay.
And they had like
Okay.
a cleanse we were doing. And I
Mhm.
met people there who I'm still like, there's one person who, Naima, we still chat and we finally met in person. Like, so there's a lot of people who I'm on the forums with, and they're around different topics who I actually do
Mhm.
eventually meet in real
Mhm.
life. And even like
Mhm.
the designer for my journal, found him through Instagram. Like I have no problem finding people on the internet and then bringing them into my life. Yeah, various communities. And I think it's just like a place where I think I was joking with you. I have my mainstream friends who are doing mainstream stuff. And then I have the people who are into like the niche, like,
The niche. So tell me
yeah.
some of your niche stuff.
There's the collages, there's people into entrepreneurship. I got people into thinking about like Afrofuturism. I'm in forums like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, it's just like a various places. And I think it's just like if I want to talk about like Afrofuturism, there's a few friends I do have who in real life who I know from college and stuff who are into that. But like on a broader scale, like I don't know that many people. So I'm gonna have to
Mhm.
go find them on the internet.
Right.
Um, on the web. And so that's kind of like where I'm able to just talk to people about, all these different things. And there's some communities where I just lurk, like I'm not actively a participant. I'm just reading what they're
Okay, that's
saying.
what lurking means.
Yeah. Definitely on Reddit. I finally like, oh my God, Reddit, I feel like is the last real place on the internet, like old school forums. But on there, like there's like for shows, certain shows I like, I'm reading
Mhm.
what people are talking about. But it ranges from like the very casual like shows that I enjoy or movies, all the way through to things that I like to do, like journaling and stationery and
Mhm.
yeah, talking about like, yeah, I just shared in one group about an AI resist list. Like, I'm not, which of my mainstream friends am I saying sharing an AI resist list? No, in this community, I know they're going to appreciate it. They're going to be talking about all the movements around the world where people are like trying to resist AI, and we'll have a fruitful conversation there. And I know I won't have that same conversation with some people like at home or, my friend group. They don't know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, it's a place that I like to be.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, it sounds to me like based on what you're sharing, that these are enhancements to your life. In one way, they're an enhancement to things that you're already doing. I love your interesting mainstream versus niche.
Mm-hmm.
Because niche also can be about like, yeah, parts of myself are seen, or there are parts of myself that I get to play with that aren't necessarily ready for prime time. Or
Mm-hmm.
there's a movement of, an emergent community, right? Like you're not the only person who's on an AI resist list, but they're not
Yeah.
that many people, right? And there are these
Mm-hmm.
big political dialogues. I mean, the Pope, right? Leo the
Mm-hmm. Oh
14th
yeah.
just had a whole conversation or released a statement this morning around the role of AI, not to resist it as if it's not a technology that can be integrated, but like, what do we need to really be thinking about in terms
Mm-hmm.
of supporting human dignity, justice, and labor? Work isn't just about money and profit. right? So if AI is going to take away jobs, like how do we support one another? Work is about meaning and social connection. And it's a channel for creativity and development, right? So it sounds to me like your some of the way that you're healing, some of the ways that you're repairing, um, are yes in these sort of traditional communal in-person spaces, but they're also sort of like spreading out. I see
Mhm.
networks, right, in these
Yeah.
sort of digital ecosystems and spaces where you feel like you could fully show up.
And I think it's also important that not all the time you're gonna know the people either. Like there's a lot of places in real life too that I just go alone because it's a topic that
Mm-hmm.
sounds interesting to me and I go. And sometimes you meet people there and then like you could form community in that way. Um, but yeah, I'm curious if you in your life you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about how like for some people it might not be the norm to grow up doing community building and
Mm-hmm.
organizing. Was that the same for you, or
No.
were you did that have to you had to grow into that basically?
Yeah. I certainly did not grow up in a household where people were talking about local politics or community politics. Um, um, or were thinking politically like in that way.
Hmm.
Like I said, I was me and my cousin were like first generation to go to college and to think in that context. I came from very poor, working class, working poor environments where people were surviving and hustling, right? And trying to figure
Hmm.
out um, how to make ends meet, how to make sure there was food and shelter and take care of their kids. I think my consciousness around community, it actually came through schooling, right? Educational institutions as gathering places of the first place, right? Where I felt nurtured. I always say to my partner, like, school wasn't always a healing isn't always a healing place. We know this for many
Hmm.
youth, for many young people. It actually can be a very traumatizing place if we think about the history of public education and trauma and urban education in particular. But for me, I shared this in a previous conversation, I found activist educators there and healing figures who were very much about using education as power and ensuring that we as young people, right, as youth came together around the topics and the issues that we cared about, and that we were collaborating and creating together. Um, I've had a lot of cohort experiences in my life,
Hmm.
right? And that's different from just moving through educational institutions to get yours, to be competitive, or to better yourself. But I've had intentional communities designed, cohort experiences where a group of individuals go through an experience, a learning experience with a set curriculum, with teachers or facilitators to help create the container for us. One that was really transformational for me is when I was struggling at my job and trying to figure. I
Hmm.
was having when I was working at that nonprofit as an executive and having a lot of challenges there around change and leadership and how to make things happen. And I decided to go back to school for my degree in social work psych. I went to the executive master's program in change leadership at Teachers College. That was a cohort experience of 20 people from around the world who were studying formally together. And that environment was, yes, we were learning things and we had classes and structures. We took classes like group dynamics, right?
Hmm.
We really learned, the course was intentionally designed as a layered curriculum where we talked about leading self, leading
Hmm.
groups, and leading systems. But I really feel like it was in that community that I felt witnessed again.
Hmm.
People, I could tell my stories, not only my ex stories of what was going on for me as a leader, but also how I was trying to make change in the world and the wonderful things about that, the barriers I was coming up against, and then having faculty and other facilitators there to help do support me with some of the sense making that of that, as
Hmm.
well as my peers. They got to share their experience of what was going on for them within their organizations or their communities or the areas where they were trying to make change, and we were able to cross pollinate ideas and really challenge each other and fuel each other, and very much like your safe haven, um, bring each other resources, right? If somebody was listening to my change challenge, they'd be like, you know what a good resource would be for you? This is how I applied it. This is what worked, what didn't. This is how it worked for me. And so, yeah, it moved beyond just going there to get a degree. It wasn't about achieving that degree. It was
Mhm.
about how do I create or find or thrive in an intentional learning community of people who are talking about this topic around change leadership and how to make ourselves, our groups, our systems better.
So it
So,
sounds like you could
yeah.
still find healing and community in places that were designed for you. Because this is not, you didn't choose the people in the cohort, the school
No.
chooses them, right? So how were you
Mhm.
able to, I guess, like, is it the shared topic that allowed you to relate? Or, yeah, I guess just thinking about the difference between making your community versus entering one made for you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Of course, we all went as individuals. People went in for various reasons. I didn't need more degrees. I never have pursued a degree just for the sake of the
Hmm.
degree. For me, it's really about learning and finding these intentional spaces. But there were a few things. Yes, it was a shared topic. So to that point, we were
Yeah.
all coming there for a purpose. We wanted to, as leaders, as executives, as people who are already senior leaders running organizations, either our own or as entrepreneurs or working in institutions, we were all coming together around change leadership. We wanted to get better. The other thing, though, I think that was a beautiful part of the design, this is what I mean by intentionally
Hmm.
designed communities, is that Deborah Newmayer, who founded this community and this program, we didn't know a lot about each other, right? So she was very intentional for us not to send out bios of people's professional
Hmm.
bios before we got there. She was very much about like, come here as your human self. Come here and be open to learning and connecting with other people from an emergent space,
Hmm.
right? And so, sometimes when you see somebody's bio, before you go, all of a sudden it starts to activate and trigger, oh, I'm in a room,
Yeah.
people start to imposter syndrome. Oh, I need to show up or I have to perform a certain thing to
Hmm.
prove to people that me and the bio are the same thing, right? And that was not, we came as human beings. It also reminds me of when I went to seminary, when I
Hmm.
decided to go to seminary. The whole time I was in seminary for 2 years, and we were the COVID class.
Yeah.
So we didn't even meet each other in person, some of us, until the end of our first year. And then
Hmm.
again in our second year, because we were all remote, we had to be remote because of the pandemic. Um, but what I love about that, I went through almost 2 years, Lisa Marie, that
Hmm.
program. I did not know anybody's professional title or who anybody was or what they had accomplished or achieved or whether they were a millionaire or not a millionaire. I
Yeah.
knew nothing about that. All I knew is that they were human beings who cared about spirituality and
And
who
how does that
wanted.
feel to kind of like, I guess, be more in that relational versus being seen as that intellectual person or the performer?
I think, much like we've been talking about, when you come into these institutional spaces with title forward or identity forward or who you know or how many degrees you have, we immediately shut down other aspects of ourselves. So those
Mhm.
niche aspects of you, for example,
Yeah.
those parts of you that have somehow been told, oh, you don't belong here, right? This is what we do here, we don't do that here. It relaxes those parts. It sort of allows these other parts of yourself to come in and for you to show up as fully integrated, as fully yourself without any of these expectations of performance, of showing up in that regard. Um, yeah. And I also think even the container for like this conversation,
Hmm.
right? Me starting a business, an intentional, human centered, heart centered business like Earthseed around
Yeah.
personal leadership development, creating more humane structures in organizations, in groups, and in systems for people. That impulse, right, was also about how do we recenter humanity back into all of these things that are dividing us, polarizing
Mhm.
us,
There's
splintering
even
us.
like
Mhm.
symbolism behind the name too, and the community and being in the community, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Can
So
you tell us? Yeah.
Earthseed, yeah, Earthseed. So the story behind that is in college, I was introduced to the science fiction author and Black feminist Octavia Butler. Um, Toni Morrison was one of my professors. And what was so dope about her, she created this very unique class at Princeton called the Princeton Atelier. And the
Mm.
Atelier is like a workshop or a
Yeah.
laboratory. And what she would do is, I think it was once a year, she would invite some professional artists, whether it was a dancer or writer, a musician, a playwright, to create a unique class at Princeton. And she would invite about 20 students. You had to apply, right? And
Mhm.
I think you couldn't even apply until you were, maybe you had to be an upperclassman, like a junior or senior.
Yeah.
I think, but you definitely had to apply to say why you feel like this class would be important to you. And so I got into this class. I got into the Princeton Atelier my junior year when she invited um, Bernice Johnson Regan of Sweet Honey in the Rock,
Mm.
civil rights activist, musician, um, and her daughter, Toshi Regan.
Mm.
They were the leaders of the Atelier. And what they did, what we did, we didn't know what the curriculum was going to be. We were like, we just know they're musicians, we're going
Yeah.
to create music together. But what they did is the whole center of that semester was read, we all were required to read Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower.
Mm.
And they took the language from that book and we created music around it. And so we all semester long, we took excerpts and language from
Mm.
Parable of the Sower and Bernice and Toshi, her daughter. And then at the end, we would perform. So the end of every
Wow.
atelier, we would all have a public performance that was open to the university where
Mm.
we created, right? With these, we
Yeah.
co-created with these authors as students. And then we would have this beautiful offering. And so I was transformed by reading Parable of the
Mm.
Sower. Um, I so transformed that I decided I wanted to write my senior thesis. We all have to write senior theses, but you have to get permission on your topic at
Yeah.
Princeton. And so I wrote my junior paper on Octavia Butler, and I decided I wanted to write my whole thesis on her. This is before anybody, a lot of people knew who she was, right?
Yeah.
The science fiction community, or if you were a Black feminist, right? You knew
Yeah.
about her writing, but she definitely was a more niche fringe
Yes, exactly.
figure, right? So
Hmm.
it's just been fascinating because I wrote my thesis on her in 1998, since 1998, right? 30, right? To see her become
Hmm.
this powerful figure. But in Parable of a Sower, Lauren Olamina, the main character, is a young Black woman who's an empath. So she has this beautiful, I mean, it's not beautiful, but it's painful to her
Yeah.
to be able to feel what other people feel. And so eventually it's a dystopian novel, right? Literally, there are excerpts from the book,
Yeah.
right? That were from like this time period, naming a
Hmm.
lot of what we're experiencing in terms of the climate,
Yeah.
the dystopian impacts of technology, the climate, violence, drugs, food scarcity, all of these things. And so people are living in gated communities. And so Lauren Olamina ends up leaving the gated community and founds this movement of people called Earthseed. And it is a community of people who believe in something better, right?
Yeah.
Of being agents of change and co-creating a new future. And it's emergent. It's emergent. So my business, Earthseed, right, it came from that inspiration of like, what does the future look like?
Yeah.
What is a future that's grounded in human spirituality and humanity and care for people and the planet? What does it mean to be stewards, right?
Mm.
I think a lot of my desire at the time, it was a shock to me to end up becoming an ordained interspiritual minister. Like this was not in my consciousness. There was no one in
Yeah.
my family doing this, right? So the fact that I've always been drawn to interdisciplinary, interspiritual, interfaith, multidisciplinary spaces was kind of a revelation to me. And
Mm.
so there's a lot about Earthseed that's not fixed. It's about an emergent space that is about, some of it is in real life, right? These trainings, communities, workshops, and gatherings, but some of it is about creating a digital community and an
Mm.
ecosystem and us knowing what that is, but coming together to co-create that, which is how we met, right?
Yeah.
Through the context of the work that Earthseed does. Yeah.
Do you feel like, well, one, I guess working with like you being on the other side as the facilitator, has that helped you heal, like helping other
Mm,
people in that way or
mm,
repair in whatever way you want to see that?
yeah. You know, part of one of the most fundamental lessons in one of in the Course in Miracles is that as you receive, you naturally give. We are love, created by love to love. Human beings, because we are in the image of creation. right? Our breath, our life, the universe and creation, the divine, God, the goddess is perpetually just sharing and giving.
Mhm.
And so that this idea that as I have received, I naturally want to give, there is no personal solitary salvation. There is no way to heaven, so to speak, or to a state of consciousness of well-being alone. And so part of what we're talking about here today is that healing happens in community. It is relational. I am not separate from you, my sister,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not my what we like to say, where I study now in intervisions, right? I'm not my sister's keeper. I am my sister or my
Mhm.
brother. I am them. I am you. And so there is no separation. As I heal, others heal, right? The work I do on myself, there is no dichotomy, no false dichotomy between the self and the system. It's all one. So, yeah, I think it's natural for me to create, and you, right? It sounds like
Yeah.
to create and to share, right?
Yeah.
And to give. As I give, I receive. As I
Yeah.
receive, I give. It becomes this energetic infinity circle of mutual
Mhm.
reciprocity of emergence, of connectivity, of interdependence, of interbeingness that is just alive and active. And so, yeah, to me, there is no separation from the collective between the collective and the self. I would also say, even me recently last year, I wasn't planning this, but becoming the board president of an emerging interfaith seminary called The Thread. To me, that is it's a natural outpouring or outflow of, right. If I am coming into my awareness about my wholeness, my humanness, about the ways that it was always a lie, right? These false perceptions of the spiritual versus the material,
Yeah.
right? There is no the ego versus the I am mind, body, and spirit. It's like, no, I am spirit. I am spirit. The course teaches I'm not spirit and human and a body. It's like, no, I'm spirit. That's reality. That's the ultimate truth of who we are, whether you study it from a spiritual perspective or from a quantum physics, right? So I think, yeah, absolutely. Being able to create now community, whether it's these conversations, business, or within the context of a nonprofit space, being
Mhm.
board president, it just feels like I want to create more humane futures. I want to create institutions that are life-giving and life-affirming. We don't have to accept systems that extract from us, that separate us, that polarize us, that tells us that financial incentives around money and technology are what we should adopt. Those are a set of beliefs, values, and assumptions. And it is up to us to show and embody new ways of being, new futures, because clearly that's what we're going to need. Everything's falling
Yeah.
apart, right? Right now, we're like, oh no, democracy, yeah, it
Mhm.
should. The systems were never serving us in the first place. So
Yeah.
why are we clinging to them? It's almost like a trauma response, right? Like
Mhm.
we're clinging to things, right, that have harmed us rather than coming together in a new space of creation. So that's the energy that I'm in. I feel like that's the energy that we're in. And
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing because I think this is
Mhm.
important. Communities are not perfect.
Mm.
I don't need a human being to be perfect.
Yeah.
Communities are messy. I'm sure when you had those gatherings in your family's living room, right? Like we're all individuated expressions of the divine. We're all unique. We all have a unique offering. We are all unique channels. And sometimes our egos clash, right?
Yeah.
Because we think we're in competition with somebody else rather than aligning around the shared or common good. So healing, human beings, we're human. Communities can be messy, they can be imperfect. Sometimes relationships disappoint us, but
Mm.
I really see communal spaces, whether they're digital and line, as learning laboratories, as
Mm.
opportunities for us. I don't learn about me and my messy until I come into contact with you, listener, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not till we're in this dialogue that I feel like I'm able to see myself more clearly. My partner always says, like, you can't see the back of your neck for a reason. You can't see your back for a
Mhm.
reason, right?
Mhm.
Because you need your brothers and sisters. We need each other to support each other's in this. So we're interested in creating communities that are and repairing and healing in community that create conditions for greater wholeness, witnessing, accountability, and humanity. But this is not easy or perfect. It can be simple, but not easy. There's
Yeah.
work to be done in communities. And so if you're afraid of being seen, if you're afraid of being not called out, but called higher, right? I need
Yeah.
you, I need fellow human beings to call me higher.
Mm-hmm.
It can be uncomfortable, but discomfort and being uncomfortable doesn't mean you're being harmed. There's
It's
a
growth.
distinction between that.
Yeah.
There's a distinction. Do you feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, I love that.
Maybe that's the way we end today.
Yeah, I do think community is not perfect. I think about this one group that was online that I was in that I actually went to a retreat in person. It's called a micro solidarity, and they talk about the different sizes of community. So you have like a dyad, you have a pod, what was the other one? A crowd, and then like different sizes, like 2, 4, 10, 500, and all
Mm-hmm.
the like what happens once you increase the size.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you deal with like coming up with some places you do need governance, other places you need norms,
Yeah.
and a shared consensus on how you want to move within the community, because they're not perfect, but doesn't mean not perfect doesn't mean it's bad. You can have an
Yeah,
apple that's not the
absolutely.
perfect shape, but it still tastes good.
Yeah.
But it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a little bit about what social organizational psychology and group dynamics theory brings to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oftentimes I find when I go into groups to facilitate learning or to help other people to lead more consciously, when I start to show them different options for the ways that they can organize themselves. Sociocracy. People are like, whoa, wait, there are decision-making models
Yeah.
and decision-making modes. And depending on the size, right, we can form
Mm-hmm.
ourselves in different ways. So much of what we have learned, it's all conditioning about, right? In our schools, in our communities, in workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't brought a lot of critical thinking. We've just accepted and received or shown up. And so part of what's going to be required moving forward here in our country, in the world, in our communities, in our homes, is that we actively seek out alternative ways of organizing and learn. And like, oh, so it doesn't have to just be a hierarchical way, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily need boards to they're governing, but why do they have to look like this? Oh, we could vote. There are different kinds. It's consensus versus
Mm-hmm.
majority rules versus like, this is what this moment is calling. It's calling for us to say, to get really critical and really creative around the ways we organize to create
Yeah.
community and not just accept that just be, a two-party system. Oh, well, that's all we know. So we should just, align on our camps. Either you're Democrat or Republican. Oh, if you're an independent, you're bad. You're pulling away from the energy. I'm like, no, I think what we're being asked to do is to look at all of that, right? We're in a system right now where we're like, well, I thought the checks and balances were supposed to work, but it's seeming like it ain't, that people are finding a lot of loopholes.
Yep.
It's crumbling for a reason. It's inviting us to bring our imagination, our creativity, our voices, our gifts, our talents to new conversations around how we organize. And is that going to be uncomfortable? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable. I don't like it. I'm in conversations with people all the time that I don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's required, right? Leadership has taught me that leadership is not about a title or position. Leadership is a practice.
Yeah.
It's a moment by moment daily practice whereby we use our influence to get a group to get to the goal. Influence, group, common goal, right? How
Mm-hmm.
are we using our influence, our knowledge, our gifts to help one another move through this great experiment that we're in? And so to me, that's how healing happens. That's how repair happens. It's not just all joy and light. Yes, absolutely. At its essence, it's joy and light. But then our humanness shows up and we got to figure out how we hold each other accountable, right? When we're not showing up at our best. And to me, that is love. Bringing love to those moments is where the real opportunity lies. So yeah, that's where I'm at in this conversation. I feel like our future conversations are going to be about new narratives,
Yeah.
new forms. What else we say we're gonna do?
New, yeah,
Reconnection. Yeah,
reconnection. Yeah.
new narratives, new forms, opportunities for connecting in real life, online, and just moving forward. One thing that stood out to me is what you said that your friend said to you, right? Like, we can't bring scarcity thinking, fear, contraction, and lack consciousness to these conversations,
Yeah.
right? You can't be focused on who didn't show up,
Yeah.
who's not joining the group. It's like, who is here,
Yeah.
right? Um, Adrienne Marie Brown talks about this a lot, right? Like, what's the conversation that can happen only here with these people?
Hmm.
Sometimes small is all, as she says. You don't need it
Yeah.
to be 1,000 people for
Yeah.
it to be the beginning of something, for it
Hmm.
to become an incubator of something that is forming. What's required is not perfection, but what is required, and this is a spiritual principle, is willingness. Are you
Hmm.
willing to be fully seen? Are you willing to be embraced? Are you willing to even be challenged? Are you willing for
Yeah.
someone to call you higher? That's what we're going to be talking about in some of these future dialogues.
Can't wait.
Can't wait. Woo,
Yeah.
woo. All right, sis. I know you got an exciting day ahead of you.
Yeah, go next.
A lot of
Um,
things talking about groups and the crowd, right?
yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation about you and your love of the Knicks and the communities that you're a part of and where you're going tonight and how y'all gonna gather to celebrate y'all obsession and love for the Knicks. But I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful time, a lot
Thank
of fun and a lot of love and a lot of joy.
thank you. Thank you.
All right.
So
Peace.
till next time.
Till
Bye.
next time.